And we are joined, welcome back to Plenty Valley FM, Mike Brady.
G'day, David. How are you, mate?
I'm going well, thanks. How about yourself?
Not bad. Yes, I couldn't be anywhere. The sun's shining. I'm sitting in the park in the Polo Bay with birds and kids yelling in the background. But it's great to speak to you, David.
Yeah, thanks very much for giving us a bit of time. We've been listening to a couple of your tracks. We began the hour with the 35th anniversary recording of Up There Kazali.
Oh, the didgeridoo.
That's the one, yeah.
I love that version. I only performed it once, but it's got. I just love the didgeridoo in it. You know. I just think it's. It's now the 45th anniversary this year.
Right, approaching the 50th.
Well, that's right. Yeah, the years are getting thinner.
Indeed. Going back to Up There Kazali, can you tell us the story behind that song?
Sorry, say it again?
Can you tell us the story behind Up There Kazali?
Oh, yeah, it's fairly simple. You know, I grew up in Port Melbourne when I came here from England as an immigrant. And the expression Up There Kazali was big in Port Melbourne and South Melbourne, where I lived. And I was asked by this advertising agency that were representing Channel 7, as it was, in Melbourne, and they wanted a theme, but they wanted something that would be as big as Come On Aussie was for the World Series cricket the year before, for the Packer organisation, who owned the Nine Network. So I said, oh, yeah, I can do that. We just need like a cat's cry. And I said, what about Up There Kazali? And the two blokes that were briefing me had never heard of it. They said, oh, I've never heard of it. What does it mean? and I just went home and wrote it. Took about 20 minutes. Wrote it the next morning. I used to sleep on things in those days, you know, and got up and wrote it straight down. Just wrote it straight down, the music and the words, and maybe made one alteration, you know, a couple of days later. I kind of knew it had something, but, you know, I never imagined it would still be around all these years later, and I'm absolutely delighted that it is.
It's probably lasted longer than Come On Aussie, Come On.
Yes, maybe. Well, that made a comeback a couple of years ago in World Series cricket, but Kazali never really went away. No.
You talked about songwriting there. Can you tell us something about the process and how you write new music?
I'm sorry, tell you. Sorry, just cutting out a little bit. Then say that again. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you can tell us something about how you approach writing new music.
Well, I'm a great believer in the subconscious, and if I get a brief to write something, or if I'm thinking about something myself that I want to write or complete, I really like to sleep on it and think it through, you know, subconsciously. And usually I have the solution in the morning. That sounds really weird, but I do it one of two ways. My favourite way is to write a bit of music and find a bit of a musical hook whilst I write the lyrics. Another way is to write the lyrics first and then set them to music, and I don't like that as much, but it's a process. Everybody writes music a different way. I remember Barry Gibb saying that they often took an old song and took the rhythm of an old song and wrote a whole new melody to the same rhythm, and that works too. There's just different formulas for different people. You're not stealing anything. I mean, if you stole the melody or something like that, but rhythms can be, you know, da 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 da, and then that could be, you know, I love you and I love you forever, something like that. And you could write when I'm out, when I'm driving my Chevy. It could be, you know, and then you just take the rhythm and discard the melody, and you go, when I'm out and I'm driving my Chevy. You know, it could be completely different. And that's another formula. There's lots of different formulas that different people use. And I tend to just, you know, try and write the music and the lyrics at the same time, you know. That's what I prefer to do. Yeah.
And you've had many memorable moments throughout your career. Is there one in particular that stands out?
Oh, yes. There is. I think playing in London was a great thrill. We played at the Tiles Club in Oxford Street and those famous English clubs. That was a big thrill. I was only about 17 or 18 at the time. But then I guess I had a lot of recording highlights, producing records for other people. That was good. But the big highlight was when Up There Kazali unexpectedly became a hit, and I sang it at the MCG for the very first time in 1959. But the official singer that year was John Farnham, and but they decided they'd get me as well. So John introduced me, and he said, "Hello, gentlemen. This is a mate of mine. Australia deserves this song. Please welcome Mike Brady." And I sang it for the first time, and there was no big production. It was just through all the metal tannoy horns that were hanging around and there was about 50 different voices coming back at me. And that was a thrill because I really felt, being a Pommy immigrant, I felt a real sense of belonging that day in 1979. Even though I had 2 children by that stage and beautiful Australian wife, and and Australia was my home, I always felt a bit of an outsider, and at that point I felt like I belonged. So I think that's probably one of the biggest thrills. But there've been, 120 or 130,000 people at the opening of Stadium Australia, and doing the grand final many other times, and of course also the grand final parade. And there've been massive crowds for those, bigger than the actual grand final itself. 150,000 or more. It's been a great journey, and I've enjoyed every little bit of it from one song.
What teams were playing on that day when you introduced the song?
In the first year, in 1979, it was Carlton and Collingwood, and it was a contentious grand final because a lot of people say that the ball went out before the winning goal was kicked by Carlton. It looked out to me, but I'm a Collingwood supporter, so Carlton got up and won. But I don't know. I leave that to the experts. It's a tricky game.
Going back even further, what inspired you in the first place to pursue a career in music?
Growing up in England, we had a couple of rock shows. Cliff Richard had Ready, Steady, Go or something like that. I loved the Shadows, the group, and I was a big fan of Buddy Holly. But in England in those days, and I'm talking about the 50s, a long, long time ago, it wasn't... There was no commercial radio. It was all the BBC, and the only thing was like Radio Luxembourg, and then a few years later the pirate ships, but I was already in Australia. So we were very restricted in what we heard. Little Richard was a great inspiration for me, Buddy Holly, as I mentioned, and of course the English group, the Shadows. But when I came to Australia, you had commercial radio, and I heard things I'd never heard before, like Eddie Cochran and Jerry Lee Lewis and Gene Vincent and all these great artists from America. We also had Johnny O'Keefe, who I loved. And in Melbourne, of course, we had John Chester. He was our local Melbourne rock star, Johnny Chester and the Chessmen. And that really, there's a motorbike going by, excuse the noise in the background, David. But I just really found music, and it's all I wanted to do was be a singer. I didn't really care about the guitar much. But I wanted to be a singer, and I never lost sight of that. By the time I was 14, I was earning money as a singer as well as having a day job.
I didn't realise that Australian radio was so far advanced.
It was so much more advanced. And all the jingles that they had on radio, and there, of course, wasn't community radio. Really, the general radio stations, the commercial radio stations, were community-based. Their followings were defined by demographics of various suburbs and stuff like that. But it was a big thing, the radio scene here. And as I said, there were so many music stations, and everybody played music. Now, I think community-wise, community radio, and you guys do an amazing job, I think is really the backbone of the remains of the Australian music industry, because you still play local. I think community radio is underestimated in its reach and its influence in Australia. We are drowning in American music. It's just unbelievable the amount of... We don't have, on commercial radio now, there's hardly any local music played. It's all American. That's just, ridiculous. And we've got a government that's funding tours here by American artists. Australian people, they keep saying about this, all these festivals are closing down. Well, that's because we don't have local support. And I give credit where it's due, and I think community radio is keeping it alive. I really do.
If you had not come from England, if you'd have stayed in England, do you think you would still become a musician?
Probably. I had learning difficulties. I left school pretty well illiterate. When I was 14, I'd been here 5 years then, but I often wonder that. It's an interesting question. I think I had a great passion for music. I think I thought I was a lot better than I was. But I worked at it. I probably would have had a different career path. Don't know whether I would have made it in England. There were some pretty talented people around, bands like the Kinks and another little band called the Beatles, and some pretty, the Yardbirds and the Rolling Stones. They were just incredible variety, and of course a much, much bigger population. So I don't know whether I would have made a mark in England, but certainly here I've had a long, long career, playing in various bands, and our first hit was number one. I think I was 14 or 15, was in 1964, in 1964, 65, with a band called MPD Limited, and we had a hit with a song called Little Boy Sad that I arranged because I couldn't play it fast like the original. And right through to today, I still record and still do a lot of live work, and it's been a long and interesting career. Some bits of it have been great, some have been downright depressing. But it's it's been what I chose and what I've chosen, and I still do it.
A few weeks ago, we spoke to Marty Wilde here.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's still going strong, still touring, and still making new music.
Well, his daughter became quite famous, and he had a hit again in the 1970s, didn't he? A big hit.
Abergavenny, I think.
Oh, there might have been that. Yeah, you could be right. But he, he's a stayer, and a lot of them have been stayers, and I'm surprised that so many of the artists, they talk about, play rock and roll and die young. A lot of artists now are still working in their 70s and many in their 80s. Look at Tom Jones. He was a wild boy. He can still cut the mustard, so to speak.
His voice is still great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, somebody told me the other day that they picked up a copy of your biography in a local bookstore, up there, Kazali, Mike Brady biography.
Oh, yeah, up there, Mike Brady. I think
it's called. 2004.
Yeah, it was written by Noel Delbridge. Yeah. He was a good mate of mine, and I worked with him in the advertising part of my career, where I wrote jingles and strategies for advertising, and I still do that. And he wrote that. And look, it was authorised, obviously, as a biography. Many people, and you got it right, you said a biography, but many people think it was an autobiography, which is not. He wrote my life from his point of view of it. And whilst I didn't completely agree with everything, a couple of the chronologies were out, but you'd expect a couple of things to be out. I think he said I left school at 15. Exactly on my 14th birthday, I went and hid. But I think it was nice. It was flattering to have someone write. And I didn't really read it till probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And I found it really confronting that somebody would take... I thought he concentrated on, too much of the sort of sex, drugs and rock and roll. Not that I was into drugs, but I was into rock and roll, and I was probably into girls, as we all were when we were running around as young blokes. But you can't even say that these days. I think you get woke for that. But, it was the way it was in those days. And it was a confronting thing to have someone write a book about you. I still have a copy somewhere, and there is one box left somewhere, but it's in storage, I think. I've been tempted to write a second edition of it, But I couldn't get his permission now because he's passed on to higher service, so probably best to leave it as it is, I think.
Well, you've got 20 more years to put into it.
Sorry?
You've got 20 more years, 2004,
Yeah.
to update it.
Yes, there's a lot that's happened in the last 20 years, I can tell you. Oh, David. Maybe you reminded me that I should let sleeping dogs lie.
And coming right up to date, and this year, what are you up to this year?
Well, I'm doing a few shows, quite a few, you know. I mean, the first half of the year is usually fairly quiet, but I've done quite a few corporate shows. I've done a big show at, with Normie Rowe, which was great, one of my old contemporaries who was such a massive star, and I've done a couple of shows with Norman. We've got another one we're probably going to announce in the next few weeks, and great to work with him. And I'm actually doing one out your way on the 9th of May, and it's a restaurant night, you know, 100 people, maybe 120 or something, in Templestowe. And, you know, I grew up, I spent a lot of my time when I first got married to when my children were beginning to grow up in Eltham. I lived on the river in Eltham, and you could almost see where I'm performing, which is the Brante, which is in Templestowe, and I'm doing a show there with the great Michael Cristiano, who's a wonderful guitarist, singer and writer and producer. He's produced lots of records for many people, including the Seekers, and he's a beautiful singer and guitarist, absolute virtuoso.
What sort of things have you got planned for that evening?
Well, I don't know yet. In fact, strangely enough, as I was driving around to Apollo Bay to see my daughter, I was thinking about what songs, because a lot of the shows we have some of the same audience come along. You know, they're very loyal, and I'm trying to give them something different. So I'll probably do a chronology. I'll probably start in 1959 and start with a song that I was really influenced by and build it up through the years up till now, and probably the latest stuff that I've recorded in the last couple of years. But I love to do different voices. You know, I do a lot of original stuff that I've written, Irish music and some of the footy stuff, and lots of stuff that is quite a way away from up there, Kazali. But I also like to do a few old covers to show people. You know, I did a bit of Ray Charles, Joe Cocker, and Elvis, and because as a session singer for probably 45 years of my life, I had to do all those songs, you know, from Ian Drury and the Blockheads to the Beach Boys. For commercials, we do sound-alikes, what they used to call it in those days. I've done, you know, things like I'm singing in the rain, I'm singing in the rain, I want to be straight, I want to be straight and set in the green, green grass of home. I do all those things. And I tell people to close their eyes, you know, time travel with me.
So lots of memories.
Sorry?
Lots of memories coming up that night.
Well, there'll be a lot of memories and a lot of stories and hopefully a lot of fun and laughter. Music is pure joy, I believe, David. It's often I get asked, what is music? And I say, well, you could call it lots of things. You could call it the international language of peace. Because I reckon music saved my life a couple of times in various places like Vietnam and Africa. I think it's actually saved me. But really, when it comes down to it, music, whatever music you're into, it can be ska, it can be punk, it can be classical, opera, rock and roll, whatever you're into, music is joy. It's great joy for the heart. So I think the short answer is what is music is it's pure joy. That's what I believe. And you'd agree with me, I reckon.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
I mean, I know you research everything you do, and you research it well. This is why I love talking to you. But you also have a knowledge which is born of love, I think. You love music, and that comes across, I think, in your broadcasts.
Thank you. So are there still tickets available for that May the 9th?
There are. Vibrante is the restaurant, VIP, like Vibrant, with an E on the end. In Templestowe, if you just look them up online, you can book with them or online, and bookings are open now. We're about a bit over half full now, and we've still got 3 weeks, a bit under 4 weeks to go. So we're thinking it will be a full house.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lovely restaurant, though. It's an Italian restaurant, obviously, and they have a sort of modern take on classical Italian dishes. And I go there with a mate of mine, Paul Baraldo, who's their coffee supplier.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, this is a great room. Would they do a show? And they've agreed to do it. So, you know, it's a dinner, sit-down dinner and show. And I don't have the phone number in front of me, but I think you may have it. But I can't look it up whilst I have to talk to you on speaker and with all the noise in the background. Anyway, it's Vibrante.
Yep.
Vibrant with an E. Vibrante.
I think I do have the number somewhere, but I'll put it out after we finish the interview.
Sorry?
I will announce the number a little bit later.
Okay,
I'll have it somewhere,
I'll send it through,
Yeah. So,
but lovely night, a lot of fun, and close up and comfortable. You know, I'm probably going to be singing within the audience around the room a little bit with a radio mic, and that'll be great because Michael can stay on stage and play. I can go for a wander, and we'd love to see some of your loyal listeners. But it's just a pleasure to be still playing music after all these years.
And you've got other dates available during the year?
Yes, there's a few more coming up that we haven't announced yet. I've got one in quite a big one in August, which is the Yarraville Club, which is a bit out of your common demographic, but that's quite a big show. Got a couple of big guest artists on that. I've got a big thing at Crown on Anzac Day, actually. Yes, a big show there with John Schumann, the great John Schumann, who wrote A Walk in the Light Green, which is also known as I Was Only 19.
Oh, yeah.
I'm doing him on the 25th of April this month, and got a few here and there coming up, and they're normally. I've got a website which is Mike Brady. If you look at Mike Brady, it'll just come up, gigs or stuff like that. And that's the way to get things around there is on Facebook, and I've got ads up on all that and everything. And, of course, Plenty Valley FM, who are always... It's probably changed now. It's not called that, is it?
Yes, yeah, your local station, 88.6, Plenty Valley FM.
Well, yeah, well, it's, community radio, yeah. I've always come to you before I go anywhere, and you're a wonderful program manager, is a good mate of mine, and... I've loved the support of community radio, and that's the way to hear about it, I think.
Thank you so much, Mike, and thanks for giving us a bit of time on this Saturday afternoon.
That's great, David, and sorry I mucked you around a little bit.
That's okay, we got there.
We got to speak, and I always love speaking with you, so thank you.
Yeah, we'll let you get back to your coffee.
Okay, bye-bye.
Enjoy, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.